amazing special guest today. My good friend Mark Fisher. Mark has two gyms in New York. Mark Fisher Fitness. They just opened up their second location. Over 700 members. 2015 was number 312 on the Inc. 500 fastest growing businesses in America. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, cool. And then obviously the cool thing, the one thing I love about Mark Fisher Fitness is it's unique and it's eccentric and it's got its own special tribe of ninjas. They live in the land of new unicorns, and their motto is ridiculous humans doing serious fitness. And so Mark, welcome to the Rise Up Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I didn't want to do the traditional like, hey, tell us about yourself. So I wanted to intro you in a different way. And so I'm going to dive right in, man. Like Inc. 500, number 312. Like how does Mark Fisher Fitness get on the Inc. 500?
Oh man. Millions of things. Like millions of things. Like I believe like a truism venture capitalist guy I'm a huge fan of, a guy named Ben Horowitz, wrote, I think, one of the best books on management called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And one of the points he hammers over and over in that book, which I think is so true and really hard to get your brain around and makes for very shitty sales copy, is that there are virtually no silver bullets in business. There's just tons of lead bullets. And I think when I look at what MFF has done, like there have just been a lot of lead bullets. You know, part of it, honestly, one of the lead bullets that no one likes to talk about so much is like luck, right? It was the luck involved. It was definitely like the right time. It was the right place. It was the fact that, you know, certainly me and one of my co-founders, Brian, had a very large community of social friends here in New York City. It was the fact that I seemed to have like a knack for like marketing and like purple cow stuff, and that I was crazy. It was the fact that we were very good at the fitness piece. When people sign up, I think, in addition to finding us funny and warm, it's very clear, I think very quickly, we're also like aggressively competent at what we're doing, and they're going to get good results and they can really trust us to take care of them. It was the fact that, you know, my business partner, Michael, had a background in more traditional business structures, and particularly those first couple of years gave us an insight into systems that we wouldn't have had otherwise. It was the fact that he had worked at the Four Seasons. So it's like literally was like a conflagration of all these different elements that led to MFF getting shot out of the cannon the way that we did.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned your business partner, Michael. And so I want to talk about that, because a lot of people want business partners or don't want business partners, or have had business partners and it's been a horrible relationship. Yeah. And so how, for you, like how have you made the relationship work with Michael? And for you, like, what do you think needs to be involved in a business partner relationship for it to be so healthy?
Yeah, I think it's tough, right? Because I think the thing that makes any relationship work in life, I think, is a balance of candor and kindness and assumption of good intent, being willing to be curious when there's a disagreement, never making the person an obstacle in the way of what you want, never denying them the dignity of their humanity. And I think certainly in our situation, we were lucky that we had known each other for more than half our lives by the time we started working together in professional capacity. So we knew each other very, very well. We knew we had a lot of the same interest. We knew we were aligned on our values. So I think that is what has worked for us, because one of the things we joke about is we tend to disagree on most things. And I think that's why that's another reason I think why MFF has and continues to do as well as we have is, for instance, when our leadership team gets together for a meeting, even Michael and me aside, we never agree on anything, ever. The MFF team never agrees on anything. And that, at a certain point in my life and career, used to kind of bum me out, because I would come in a meeting, I'd be like, oh, I have this idea that is universally, obviously brilliant. And there would always be a few people who'd be like, that's a shitty idea. That's dumb. That's dumb. And they'd be like, damn it. And now the longer I've been in the game, the more I really value the fact that we all like disagree in a very heated way all the time about everything, because it makes our thinking better. And I think Michael and Myers' relationship is a little bit of a microcosm of that. And actually a little bit unique in that, honestly, it tends not even to be like that heated. Like I basically never get mad at him. Sometimes he gets like kind of annoyed with me, but I also don't really care, which is weird, because usually I really care if someone's mad at me. I'm like, okay, well, you disagree, but all right. So that I think, you know, is certainly, I think, what has worked for Michael and I think more broadly for MFF. I think for people looking to hire a partner, I think that can be a very attractive and alluring thing for a lot of people. And, you know, understandably, because you're not alone. But I think part of the challenge you see is oftentimes people will get a partner because they're afraid to do it on their own. And what you see often, which is, it doesn't mean it can't work, but is very challenging, is when you have two trainers get together because they don't want to do it alone. And now you don't even have complementary skill sets. You have people sort of fighting over the same domain expertise, two people that are interested in kind of the same stuff. Importantly, two people that are not interested in the same buckets of very important things that need to get done to run a business. So it's tough because for me, it's certainly like that, no doubt, is a large part of MFF's success, is that there were two owner operators with different skill sets that just went super ham. And I think it's hard to have the level of success we had at the speed we had it without that. But at the same time, I think most people are better off growing more slowly, growing more steadily, and doing it without a partner, unless they really know for sure that's someone they're willing to marry. Because it is a marriage. It is a marriage. It's like, it's very like a high stakes situation, and it's very hard to get out of it. So most people would be better off. The better move for a lot of people, frankly, is probably finding somebody to work for you. That's, you know, the classic move would be start outsourcing administrative stuff as soon as possible to borrowed client, with the dream situation that you slowly turn that person into like a part-time and then a full-time and then an office manager person. And maybe even one day you give them some equity, but it's helpful in most of the time for one clear person to be in charge. I am a student of very, very nerdy management literature. I believe in business as a vessel for freeing mankind. However, I think, unfortunately, businesses tend to work best as benevolent kingdoms. And there tend to be some challenges when someone is not really in charge. And interested viewers would do well to just check out Holacracy, which I think is brilliant. And there are many things from that management operating system that we've adapted. But I think it's also very challenging to get the work done if it's not clear who has the final say. And again, to be clear, to their defense, Holacracy, I think, does attempt to get around that. I'm not 100% convinced it's really possible with that approach. And that's all I'll say about that, because that will make more sense. If you're a management nerd, go look up Holacracy and enjoy that rabbit hole. I'll see you in 2 days after you're done reading. Crazy rabbits down there. Crazy rabbits.
Right, right. So when you guys do have disagreement or see things in two different views, like how do you work that out? Like, so that how do you eventually, because obviously for the business to be successful and to run, both y'all need to be somewhat on the same page and they're heading in somewhat of the same direction. But when there's differences in views, like how do you work that out so for the betterment of Mark Fisher Fitness and the team?
I think we're both like, you know, I don't know. I think part of it, again, it might be like dumb luck. I think generally we're pretty deferential if one of us has a very strong opinion, because sometimes one of us just like feels very strongly about something. You know, broadly, it seems often, frankly, a lot of the time, like Michael cares about a lot of details I don't care about. So he makes a lot of like small decisions, and a lot of like the big things I'm like, this is what I need to do or whatever. Like, cause there's some things I'm like weirdly obsessed with. Like, so I am weirdly obsessed with like anybody that comes on the MFF team and like, I really want to spend like some substantive time with and be like, okay, you want to join this unicorn revolution here? And Keeler is cool. He's like, get somebody good. So yeah, so I think like, my sense of it is that Keeler has a pretty intuitive knack knowing me pretty well. When something's like really, really special or important to me, he tends to be like, okay, and just kind of let me have my own way. And then most of the time I let him do whatever he wants.
Makes sense.
But it would be interesting. Yeah. It's a curious thought experiment. What would happen if we both really, really fell? I think we would just like keep talking about it. You know, we would just keep talking about it until we got to the same place. I think also the other thing, both of us are, I think, understand that nothing is correct and nothing is like right. So I think it's almost like whoever cares more about it tends to win. Because the one who like doesn't care like quite as much sees it's like, all right, well, geez, my friend like really cares about this. All right, I think this is like a bad idea, but like also I could be wrong. So, you know, I think approaching with that humility, I think, is another piece of it that allows us to be like, let the other person have their way. Because in any given situation, both of us know whatever we think might be wrong, no matter how much like we feel passionate about it, no matter how much like we are, you know, neither of us are without confidence in our intellectual faculties. But we both know, like, I don't know, I've seen everything work or everything be a failure in my career in the fitness industry. So what do I know?
So then for you, so how do you take that information and bring it down to the team? And I know you wrote a really cool piece on for Business for Unicorns, which we'll talk about, but there was a really cool piece on meetings and holding a meeting. And for us, like myself included, I oversee a team of 13 trainers, and sometimes meetings, over the last year, I've been doing my best to get away from meetings just to be about here's what's coming in this month, here's our numbers.
Sure.
Like, because obviously as trainers, numbers don't speak to them.
They don't
So
care. Yeah.
they don't. So for
Yeah.
you, like, how have you changed the way you do meetings so that there is more engagement from the team and the team walks away feeling inspired to go implement whatever it is you guys are talking about implementing or doing or changing in Mark Fisher Fitness?
Well, I can let you know what we've tried. I think, we're not there yet. I think we'll never quite be there. I think meetings are generally bad because meetings are hard. I think that's why most people suck at them. It's actually very, very hard. But meetings are like literally the lifeblood of most businesses. So I think it's well worth it if you're looking to run a business of really any size, getting very good at running effective, interesting, engaging meetings. And there are so many people that have written and spoken on this so much more articulately than I can, but a few, I think, very high level things are: number one, whenever possible, try not to have a meeting. Whenever possible, if you can do it over emails, do it. If you have to do it, figure out what are the least number of people that need to be there, and then what is the least amount of time we can allot to the meeting, because meeting does take away from like getting whatever it is your job done. I think number two, always starting with like, what's in it for you, what's in it for me radio, because every meeting is like a little sales conversation, right? In the beginning, you have to sort of sell people on why this is actually meaningful, and never forgetting you can't just assume as the leader because you understand why a certain skill set or a topic matters to them, that you still need to sort of walk them through the process of understanding why it's important that you spend time on whatever it is you're going to spend time on, whether it be a brainstorm or an in-service or a role play or whatever. The third piece, which I think we're starting to integrate at MFF and has been very useful, which we stole from something called Traction, which is essentially an entrepreneurial operating system that nerdy nerds, if you want to go read the book Traction, great book if you run a business of any size, because it can help you really make sure you've got a clear dashboard and you understand who owns what. But one of the things we started doing that in our monthly 30-minute leadership meeting is we rank the meeting right after on a scale of 1 to 10. And it's interesting because as trainers, as students of like deliberate practice and mastery, one of the things we know you need is deliberate, like constant feedback. You need immediate feedback, like right after the moment about how that went. And more we've started doing is ranking our meetings as a team. And we've just started doing this with the full team. And in part, that's because I think the first few months of this year, I started getting like kind of delayed feedbacks and people being like, what are we doing? This means we're stupid. Like, this doesn't feel useful. And, that's important feedback for me to get, but I understand it's not like a total nightmare. I trust the team. If they were like really thinking I was shitting the bed, they would let me know. It was more just like, this just wasn't that good. And I'm trying to, empower everybody to do not tolerate any badness. Do not tolerate badness of any meeting hygiene. If you think this meeting is a waste of your time, we need to have a conversation about it, because maybe we either don't need to have the meeting, or maybe like whoever's running the meeting needs to do a better job of making engaging, giving it stakes. So my hope is we will see more of that in the months to come. It's a little bit of an experiment. We haven't done it yet, but I'll tell you, the Traction meeting, which is again a 30-minute leadership meeting, which is mostly about numbers, which you think would be dumb and boring, the scores have gone up over a year and a half. We rarely have people rank meetings below 8 or 9. And that's because at the end of every meeting, you'd be like, 7, I thought we talked too long about this thing. And then what happened was the meeting really course corrected. Now, will this be as effective with a full team meeting or with just the full trainer meeting? I'm not sure, but it never hurts to get feedback. Feedback is important data if you want to steer a unicorn rocket ship through the cosmos.
What's that? So can you describe kind of your process when you have like a monthly meeting with your team? What's the process that you and Michael maybe or whoever's leading, like describe that process? Like, how do you set the meeting up?
Yeah, so for the full team meeting, we'll stick to that, although there are a bunch of sub meetings between managers and direct reports. But for the full team meeting, the entire team meets together every Wednesday from 2:30 to 4:30. And we have essentially a document for the entire year laid out of what we'll spend that time on. Because I always think about things in constraints of time. And I think one thing that serves me, and part of why I think I've had so much success with time management, I think I'm pretty good at not falling into planning fallacy, which a lot of people fall into. Like, I know how long things are going to take, and it's longer than everybody else thinks. So, because if you think about that, 2 hours, let's say, on average, there's going to be 4 meetings in a given year that don't happen. So if we do the math of that, it's 52, so we're 104, so we're at 96 hours per year. It's not a ton of time. Not a ton of time in that meeting. I want to use it well. So the loose structure that we use we have a 4-week cycle where we're rotating what the emphasis is. And we're always trying to split between mindset and skill set, between trainer and biz team. So the way this looks in practice is 1 week, we will get together and we will do some sort of service or coaching breakout all together. Then on the next week, we will split up and HK and Bowery will meet separately and do whatever is appropriate for them to do in their individual teams. Then the following week, we will get together and we will do a dedicated in-service or breakout between the trainer and business team will split out. And then the fourth week, we will learn the new class phases for the next 4-week cycle. And that in many ways functions as second de facto in-service for the trainers to spend time together working on their craft and the biz team to do whatever it is that they need to do in that time. So that's sort of like the macro. Now in the meeting itself, there's some things we do every meeting. So every meeting starts with writing cards to our clients. We have a document where we keep track of when things happen in Ninja's life that we want to acknowledge. We keep track of that and send people cards. We then read our mission out loud, usually in some insane way. Like now we're going to read the mission, but like we're like old ladies, or now we're going to read the mission but as loud as we can, or now we're going to read the mission like we're trying to make a baby fall asleep. So we find that a useful way to keep both the mission top of mind in a way that means everybody on the team could recite the mission to you, but allows us to keep it like irreverent and like have fun and not be like, wah, wah, like self-serious, which as you can tell, I am allergic to. Then after that, we go through our glows and grows. So at Mark Fisher Fitness, we have a system called Glows and Grows where we track any exceeded expectations or any missed expectations. So anytime a ninja is not a great experience, or anytime a ninja or a team member notices a team member doing something above and beyond, we record that. And then during the team meeting, we will then we'll celebrate the glows and we will recap what happened with the grows. The manager that owns whatever function the grow is in reports on how they followed up with the ninja, and if appropriate, how we're changing the system to avoid that grow from happening in the future. So that usually takes up about like 30 minutes. Sometimes there's some announcements we need to do. Sometimes there's some HR stuff we need to cover. And then we usually have about 90 minutes for this other stuff. And I should say it's still like a loose system. So based on what we're doing, we do spice it up a little bit, but we do go so far as if we need to like switch a meeting, we will actually go in the document and switch it so that we don't wind up doing too much of one thing. Because again, part of what I'm thinking when I think about meetings, again, it's a soup. So one of the pieces of feedback we got earlier in the year from the team, and I think this was accurate, from the training team started getting frustrated because they felt like we just weren't spending a lot of time on training. And MFF, as you might imagine, yeah, we can fall pretty hard into customer service stuff, into like, let's explore our values kind of stuff. And that stuff is important. That's all well and good. But like, I get it. Trainers got to train. Sometimes you just want to talk about ripping the bar apart and deadlift. And the reality is we have to train on that as well. And one thing that I'm fond of saying is that pros or amateurs practice till they get it right. Pros practice till they can't get it wrong. So just as a best practice of learning, people need spacing is a very important part when people are learning things. They need to review things kind of over and over. And I think that's another thing that's tough to get your head around as a leader is you have to review the things that matter over and over and over. You can't say something once. You can't if something is important that you want to be professional competency for your team, you might need to do an in-service on that once a month for a while. And then you might need to still review it every quarter also because most business people are coming and going. So that's like some very high level insight to how we set up our meetings.
Thank you. So what's the process with bringing on team members? I mean, you've got such a amazing team. And obviously we had our friend Liz who went through the intern program. Like, how do you go about finding team members that fit Mark Fisher Fitness?
There are sort of two different paths because it depends on what we're looking for. The trainers at this point is quote unquote relatively easy, quote unquote, because now anybody that's interested in being a trainer at Mark Fisher Fitness will join the trainer in residence program, which is essentially like a 4-month-long temporary position on the training team where we have an opportunity just to see if this is going to be a fit. So the trainers are a little bit easier because as part of that program, they have a 2-week-long onboarding where we really get them up to speed. And then we have months to work with them to sort of not only see if they're the right fit, but really train them up to join the team full time if, again, that's something that both parties thinks makes sense. And if we have a need for it, all sorts of other factors that go into making that decision. So this onboarding process for the trainers is 2 weeks and it's pretty systemized and we're constantly tinkering it because as you'd imagine the best and worst part of me is I'm never satisfied with anything, but it's pretty good now. And essentially it is a 2-week onboarding process of about about 30-ish hours per week that's set up. And again, I always think similar to the meetings, it's like, all right, well, then I've got 60 hours, 70, 80 hours to work with over these 2 weeks. Am I proportion that time in a way that's reflective of our values and the emphasis I want to put on various competencies? So when anybody starts in Mark Fisher Fitness, and this actually goes to the business team too, you're going to do 3 hours with me just on culture. Before you do anything, we're going to spend 3 hours just talking about culture. I'm going to have you read and review a bunch of documents beforehand. I'm going to have you watch Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team beforehand. I'm going to find out about your history of working with previous teams, where you've seen conflict in previous work environments. I will often, try to destroy any dreams they have about Mark Fisher Fitness being perfect. Try to lead with my own epic failings up front. Let them know that Mickey and Minnie are going to fight. They're going to fight. And you're going to see it. It's not actually Disneyland. And, just try to get to know them and both have an opportunity for them to get to know us, for us to get to know them. And I think most importantly, really begin to develop that relationship and really set the tone of, like, ideally, the dream of Mark Fisher Fitness, anybody that comes here and works for the team, whether it's a trainer in residence or someone that joins the team for 10, 15, 30 years, is here to become the best version of themselves. And sometimes that journey may take them somewhere else, and that's okay, because the mission isn't just about Mark Fisher Fitness. It's about anybody that touches our business becoming a better version of whatever it is that they want to be. So with the trainers, we probably don't need to get too granular, but essentially, as you imagine, after that, there's some class, there's some practical, like, lecture style training. There is a lot of shadowing. There is taking of the class in semi-privates. There's co-teaching of the class in semi-privates. We do separate, like, brief modules on customer service practices, a brief module on coaching conversations and communication skills. They certainly spend some time with HR, as you'd imagine. So that's basically what we onboard the trainers. The business team is a little bit different, and the trainers now, because MFF has a national profile, we're able to get applications literally from all over the world when we open up enrollment for the trainer residents. So it's become a pretty competitive job to get, and we can be pretty choosy about who we bring in. And the business team actually is competitive for a different reason, in that it doesn't require as specialized skill set. So it tends to attract a lot of people in or directly adjacent to the Ninja Army that see what we're doing and want to be a part of it. And that is also awesome. But it is a very different onboarding process, because their skill set naturally tends to be a little bit more traditional administrative. So in a vacuum, on the one hand, you might say it's not as hard to find people that can just be proficient front desk and answer emails. But our cultural standards and our standards for people to really live our values the way we ask them to, which is not easy, actually means it's again, kind of competitive to find, like, the people that kind of are the right fit. But the final thought I'll say about this is, I think one thing that has served us from day one is my MO is that basically I'm always looking for the next MFFer. Like, I'm never not looking for the next person that can hear the call of unicorns. And when we find people, I think we're also pretty good about being like, all right, this position right now isn't the right fit for you, but, like, let me stay in my arms. And that feels good too, because it's also the other thing too. I'm interested in developing relationships that are, out of that value of service, where it's like, regardless of whether you're here or not, like, you're special, you do special stuff. Because in many ways, I think of my main job as a talent manager, right? I recruit, and then I try to do my best, like, take care of the talent I have. So I'm never not looking for talent, or try to take the best care of the existing talent I have and make sure they feel supported, that they feel taken care of, they feel like they have opportunities, et cetera.
Nice. So you mentioned culture, and I know culture is something you've been hitting on for the last couple of years, definitely the last year. Why is culture so important in the success of not just Mark Fisher Fitness, but any business or any training business? Why is culture so important?
This is funny. Maybe I read this somewhere. This is the answer that's coming. I don't think I've said this out loud. This is weird, but I think this may be super useful. I think it's because you can't standardize everything. You can't make all your expectations clear. It is simply not possible, no matter how rigorous you make your employee training manual or your standards, your standard operating procedures. So many things are going to happen that are unforeseeable and are not in your control. And the way you codify the best practice of behavior is through culture. Because that's what culture is. And it's cultural things is hard to define. The definition most people use is Peter Drucker's, the way we do things around here. I think that's a pretty good one. When I try to help people get a little bit more directive with their cultures and try to establish what it is they want. For me, it's hard to extricate culture from values. It's frankly hard to extricate culture even from brand, right? Because your brand ideally is a reflection of your culture, which is a reflection of these values. So I think being clear about what the values of the organization are and what that looks like in behavior, not just as an academic thought experiment, is crucial. And I will also concede that's another process. You just never get there. You're never done, and the team, God love them, are just incredibly patient with me because I'm just relentless about like, how else can we get these in values? Because for me, and this is like my thing that I got to figure out. It's like my job. It's like, it's so clear to me what we mean by the term like dependability. It's so clear to me when there's a violation of dependability, when someone didn't do what they said they were going to do, that is a major issue, it's a major violation of the values we say matter, right? And to create a culture that's reflective of your values, you also need a lot of accountability. And that's a real tough pill for a lot of people to swallow too. I think if there's one thing we've made really amazing strides, particularly in the past like 18 months at Mark Fisher Fitness, is I do think in useful ways, the standards just continue to get higher as far as like what we expect of each other. And, that's what I love about MFF. And that's why I feel excited to have a group of people that are down to play that game, where ideally every year to 2 years, just like a trainer, you look back at your program for a couple of years ago, you should be like, doesn't mean it was bad then, you just knew less. Same thing, I think, with how well we adhere to these standards and how much we demand of each other to be the best versions of ourselves in the service of our community and in the service of our mission. And yeah, I think it's like, it's the secret sauce, man. But I don't know that people often think, because culture often is associated with, oh, you have unicorns, right? Or if you look in the tech startup space, you've got a great culture. You have nap pods and a foosball table and a kegerator. And those are kind of culture, I guess, but I would say that those are the manifestations of a culture, which is a manifestation of values. And I think you have to start with getting clear about the values first. Because to some extent, without going, and this will be my final thought on this, sort of like a weird, maybe philosophical thing, hopefully somewhat practical. Business, for me, is a expression of a philosophy of life. What does it mean in a perfect world? How would humans treat each other? How would we treat each other if we wanted to make a beautiful planet? Can we create this sort of mini society where we embrace these values, these principles and standards of behavior, and then see how that goes
I like it.
I think it goes. I like what we're doing. I like I heard someone say this recently too. This is brilliant. You want to make the city that you want to live in.
Yes.
We're creating the city that we all want to live in.
Well, let's talk Mark Fisher Fitness. I know we've talked about it, we mentioned, but we haven't really got into like, what is Mark Fisher Fitness? We know it's a gym, but it's really not a gym. It's a special, unique kind of place. So and I know there's 2 locations now, right? We just opened up the second location.
Just like a year and a half ago.
So what is Mark Fisher Fitness? Loaded question.
It's technically gyms. When some people would say that, we don't like the term gym. We call it enchanted ninja clubhouses of glory and dreams. We essentially, it's a gathering space, I think, for like-minded people to work on their fitness as a foundation of living their best life. I think we attract particularly people that are not interested in more conventional fitness options. I think it is a place to negotiate your relationship with madness and mortality. It is a temper tantrum against nihilism. It is an art project like cult, like secular church, fucking shenanigans, Burning Man, whatever. And it's like a love letter to humanity. And I don't think I can answer it more potentially than that, but I don't think, and I know it's like all like sort of so like ineffable. It's all like floating, like
that's pretty much what it is.
It's certainly what we aspire to be, like in our, and we're like everywhere else, we're completely dysfunctional and imperfect. In our worst moments, we're like, like a business that messes up sometimes and where people get into fights and, none of us are 100% perfect all the time. But I think like we have a clear vision of what we're all trying to create together. And I think that more times than not, like we come pretty close. And, the other thing about MFF too, that I just don't think is appreciated, is hard to overstate. And I realize, we are the team, you might argue, is sort of the prime movers, and we've created the space for it. But MFF also is an expression, I think, of like deep like dreams and desires of the ninja community. And in very real ways, the ninjas have shaped MFF, everything from the use of the unicorn as a symbol to the term ninja. Like it is this, the people that have come here that have raised their hands said like, I believe what you believe. I believe this too. I believe what you believe. And we have tried to, and I think we've been pretty successful from day one, allow that to be a dialogue and allow that to be a conversation instead of like us autocratically being like, all right, we do unicorns now. You know, and like any community, there are, you know, inherent tensions and conflicts and negotiations that happen when you're not completely living a life that's for yourself. But I think we've generally negotiated pretty well. And we just have a lot of like interesting, thoughtful, bright, like beautiful lovers of humans. So we all made this weird thing together.
Who's attracted to Mark Fisher Fitness? Because I know your backstory is coming from Broadway and being an actor and then working with other actors or actresses on the fitness realm, and that's kind of how Mark Fisher Fitness got started. But who comes in? Who walks through your door?
Yeah, I mean, all sorts of people, really. It's, you know, we always say in the most like positive, like loving way, like it's like the Isle of Misfit Toys. It's just like just a variety of humanity, generally linked by the fact that many of them, but not all, again, not all, it's hard to even talk about the ninjas, right? It's talking about like a city. It's hard because it's like, well, you know, there's so many people here. You can't really talk about like the archetypal ninja. But like most of the people, you know, are people that have struggled to find like a fitness home that felt right to them. It's a good spot for people that value community and connecting like in a meaningful way, for people that value coaching. I think another thing that unites ninjas is, and this I think is not commonly appreciated, is a lot of the ninjas, because we have a lot of like, I think very intelligent, discerning people, they really value that we're nerds about the fitness. So our tagline is ridiculous human, serious fitness. And from a Purple Cow marketing perspective, you know, people see all the crazy stuff on social, and purposely so. Of course, we're pouring gasoline, all of that fire, like the crazier the better. Like I like people being like, you won't believe what they did now. And they're often, I think, drawn to that. But I think what ultimately has them stick around, the people that would like love MFF, are frankly a lot of people that like we turn into like kind of training nerds. So they get it, and it's very important to them. They appreciate how just driven we are to be great at training and create a best-in-class product. I think they appreciate that we continue to change our systems and philosophies over time as the industry evolves and research evolves. So those are the things I think ninjas like value. Yeah.
Do you feel
they come kind of from all walks of life?
Now, do you feel a lot of personal trainers, gym owners, like shine away or try to stay away from their own personal uniqueness for the fear of being judged? Like, you know, because yours is so unique and so different, and you've owned it. And that's been a big success to Mark Fisher Fitness. When you go to most studios or gyms or health clubs, they all kind of look the same, and yet yours is completely different, and it's been successful. Do you feel like a lot of people shine away from their own uniqueness for the fear of being judged by who's walking through the door?
Maybe. I don't really know. I think maybe that's part of it. I also think like not everyone is that weird. You know, like that's part of it too. Like I think like everybody's like a little bit weird, but like we're like pretty weird. You know, even on the team, like not everybody's like as weird as I am. You know, and that's the thing that's like tough too. It's like, you know, because I never would want anyone to feel pressured, like I've got to be weird, or, you know, because I think we can all read when it doesn't feel like authentic. No doubt, I think most humans, it's human nature to not want to stick out, right? Because the sore thumb gets fucking pounded in the ground, particularly when you're in middle school. So I think most of us learn to beige those things out. And I do think, you know, all of us have some variation of freak flag. But again, everyone's like different, you know, and some people are like, I think are so weird because they're just like not weird at all. You know, I've met people that are just so normal though. Like, this is weird. You're very normal. It's very, very weird. So, you know, it's hard to tell. I have a hard time unpacking that because like I said, I don't necessarily want, you know, I would love if part of the message of MFF is like, be the full you, but I don't want everyone to think the full you, like definitionally needs to be wearing hot pants and covering myself in glitter. Because that's, you know, that's just like not everybody's jam. It's not the right fit for everybody. But I do think that, you know, part of what I think has drawn people to MFAB is I think it's very permissive when you see somebody doing that and it's like pretty clear that they're following their own star. Like even somebody that's like, God, you're annoying and this is obnoxious, but all right, good for you. Go get him. Go get him. I'm running the hell away, but good for you. Because literally, you know, I'm talking Perform Better this weekend, and when Amanda Wheeler Wheels and I were like kind of talking over the hands-on, which is essentially an overview of how we onboard people in some of our fat loss programming. You know, we like part we have to address is like experience, right? How do you create fun? And yeah, I don't have an info product for 3 steps to be super crazy. You know, I can't figure out like here, you know, I don't have any sort of like system for that.
Yeah.
I do think honestly, fitness professionals would benefit from taking Toastmasters and taking improv and even studying stand-up comedy, because anytime you're going to be in front of a room of people, I think honestly, anybody that's a business leader of any kind, to be able to articulate yourself clearly in front of a room in a way that is compelling and memorable and helps people learn and really understand what you're trying to get across, I think is like just a master skill of the human experience. But again, I concede, I don't know that everybody needs to, you know, do that while doing like pirouettes and having a flock of condors fly behind them and fireworks happening and a kick line of chorus girls. And
That'd be kind of cool, actually.
yeah, I mean, maybe they should.
So what's been the biggest influence on you? When you know, maybe who's been the biggest influence on you, and whether it be personal or professional, like who's helped make you be Mark Fisher?
Like literally everyone. I mean, that's what's, it's hard for me to answer because I feel like I'm such a voracious reader and absorber of information that I feel like I have like a.
Has there been a book that's been the most impactful for you?
I mean, Delivering Happiness, I think in many ways was a useful, like, oh, you can be like, because one of their values would be a little bit weird. And then I saw that line and I was like, oh, get out of the way. Here I come, get out of the way. So that book definitely, I think, honestly, the work of Seth Godin, I think has always been very important to me because he really spoke to me as like an artist, which was important to me to make the leap over to entrepreneur because I, you know, rightfully so, like, you know, marketers are like mostly terrible. They mostly just ruin everything by creating, you know, the sort of conspicuous consumer culture and sort of manufacturing desire for things to, you know, satiate these various evolutionary psychological needs. So mostly they're very awful. A lot of them, they're not bad people. They're just like generally, you know, oftentimes doing damage to make money. And someone like Seth Godin is so beautiful because he's so like the opposite of that, you know, like, and he stands for, you know, and listen, there's, you know, I don't mean to be like flipping about it. And you know, I feel bad if anyone's watching like, you're a jerk, I'm a marketer. Well, you know, listen, I'm a marketer too. I'm not saying it has to be that way, but I think we also have to be critical of ourselves. We also have to be mindful that, you know, a real challenge is oftentimes the things that will lead to the best like results from a direct marketing perspective are also part of this media messaging that is like definitely, you know, doing probably some real human damage to people. And someone like Seth Godin stands so apart from that. And it's not to say that I can't learn from people that I have different values with, because many of the people that I'll tell you what have been very influential to me are people like I have very strong, like do not like oil and water from a values perspective. But Seth Godin is someone that I very much like aligned with. I also think Zingerman's Deli is a not particularly well-known weirdly company that I'm just like everybody in the world. But I think when I look at Ari Weinzweig, who is the CEO and founder of Zingerman's, and what they've done and the way that he's done it, to me, he is the model of a person. First of all, it doesn't hurt that our values are similar, right? So there's a piece of this that's not right or wrong, just happens to be like, he and I are kind of sitting on the same side of the boat. You know? Like we're like on the same side of the boat. And because of that, because we believe a lot of the same things, I have found his works to be incredibly important to me and very influential, not just the leader I wanted to be, but for, I think, my vision for what I think MFF can be and stand for in the world.
Now, he has a book, right? Is it what's
like
the name?
Hundreds. Like this guy, I'm like, how do you get so much stuff done?
Oh.
His book, he has a series of books called The Lapsed Anarchist's Guide to Fill in the Blank.
Okay.
Because his whole thing was he was a Russian literature major at the University of Michigan, and he was particularly interested in the philosophy of anarchy, which is distinct from like blowing up buildings and overthrowing the government. But anarchy is sort of like a personal anarchy, sort of like an internal liberation theology. And he is just like stunningly brilliant. And I find his books to be incredible. And they're all called The Lapsed Anarchist's Guide to Building a Great Business, or The Lapsed Anarchist's Guide to Managing Oneself. And it's really fascinating because he's a true scholar of the business literature. And he is just encyclopedic in his knowledge of, I think, all the best material written about business, literally since 1900, since we've been writing about business. And he will often offer his interpretations of a lot of these standard, I guess you could say, flag bearers, like standard bearers of a lot of business best practices, particularly for those that, believe in sort of progressive business as a vessel whereby which humans can free themselves of our self-imposed chains. But, that's not for everybody. So like, I get that.
No, I gotta check that out. Sounds interesting.
Oh, it's utterly amazing.
What do you think for you? Like, how do we know the industry's changing, and we know what our what our members are asking for is changing. What do you think we can continue to do, or we need to start doing to continue to make sure we're having the impact in people's lives that we all started out wanting to do in the very beginning?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah, it's like $1 million question, right? Like I'm not really sure. I mean,
what's Mark Fisher fit? What's MFF doing? How are you doing that?
I mean, we're talking to our ninjas. Like for me, it's like, man, it's like so dumb. But like that's like mostly business, right? You just like keep talking to your people, and it's tough because people don't always know what they want, or they're not always honest about what they want. But for us, like we're just like everybody else. I think we're like paying attention as aggressive as you can to every industry, everything we're seeing across the industry. We're looking to lateral and adjacent industries, both like a behavior change and hospitality, customer service. We're seeing what trends are happening there. And we're, listening to our own hearts and trying to build something out of our uniquely weird background. I think that's something that's very much service. Our background is so eclectic and bizarre. And I think most people say that. I think ours it's uniquely weird, which has been helpful for us. And for me, I've always maintained sort of like servant leadership, right? Like where it's like our job is to serve the ninjas, right? Just as my job is to serve the team, to serve the ninjas. MFF's job is to continue to listen to the ninjas and to not be satisfied and continue to find out what else can we do. And I think tech is going to continue to change stuff.
Of course. I
think the opportunities and options we're going to have with tech are like just like every other industry. I think things are going to continue to move quickly, and we all have to stay kind of on top of that. And yeah, it's I think that is a thing that I'm going to be very interested to see. I think in the next like 10 years is the way these platforms, some of which I think are already alive, but I don't know there's robust as are going to be. I'm a little bit techno-utopian. I believe too that we can use tech actually to save us in the way that tech has presented lots of problems to date. And that's potentially incredibly idealistic. We'll see. It could be fantastic. But I do believe it. So I don't have a, particular, like, we need to go here kind of next. I would say if there's maybe one thing I think we probably could still do more of, but I think we're doing more than ever, is just, understanding what I think anybody's been in the industry more than a few minutes knows, which is, fitness is not about the sets and the reps. And oftentimes, by dint of being in the fitness industry, you will never really be able to understand your clients, because even if at one point you hated fitness, just the fact that you're in the industry now, and you were interested enough to make it your profession, regardless of what's going on with your own fitness or your own physique or your own current or past challenges, that just separates you in a really profound way from the people that like are not in the fitness industry. So, as far as I'm concerned, like more conversation, more empathy, more love. I roll my own eyes when I say that, but truly, like, that's only going to make things better. And there will never be any easy answers. It'll just be lots and lots of lead bullets, no silver bullets.
Last two questions for you. What, Mark of today, if you had to go back 10 years ago, what would Mark of today, what piece of advice would you give younger Mark Fisher?
Oh God. Well, God, 10 years ago, I was like nailing it. 10 years ago, I was so stoked about my life. Like wow. It's so funny. 10 years ago is like particularly like, almost 10 years ago today was a very, very important moment in my life. I opened up a show that I was doing, and I had broken up with a long-term girlfriend. We were very close, still very close. We had like a mutual breakup, and it was a very important moment in my life. I think I finally became an adult. It was my Saturn returns year. And I think for the first time ever, I really feel like I became who I wanted to be that year. So I don't know. So if I had my 10 years ago Mark now, I've had some much ebbs and flows since then, as you might imagine.
I maybe go 5 years ago. What advice would you give yourself 5 years ago?
5 years ago? I would love to just give myself permission just to enjoy it all, even not enjoy it more, because I think I enjoyed it as much as I could, but just be like easier on myself. Mm. Like, I think I was just very, very hard on myself the first couple of years of MFF. And I had never had a business before. So whenever anything went wrong, or if anybody, like if a team member was upset with me, or if a ninja was upset with MFF, like it was like, I couldn't breathe. And I still struggle with, I'm still a people pleaser. I still struggle with like very badly wanting to please people and be liked. But in retrospect, I was so inhumanly hard on myself in a way that was like really like not kind, you know? And like I said, to my credit, that's not mutually exclusive with loving it. Cause I don't feel like I could have had more fun. Like no one, like very few people have more fun than me. I'm not without my challenges, but I'm great at having fun. I have a lot of fun.
Yeah, we are.
And I wish I would have just been I would just tell myself to just like breathe a little bit more and enjoy it, and move a little quicker away from this sort of perfectionistic mindset, which can be very useful with your work, but it will never be useful with people. Mm. You can be efficient with things, but you must be effective with people. Stephen Covey. Blah, 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 blah.
I like that. We'll quote that. Last question. Your rise up moment. So I ask every guest on the show, what for you was your rise up moment? Like at what point in time? It could be either you took the initiative and it was your first show and that's when you knew you loved acting, or it could have been a breakup or something that triggered you to like, okay, this moment is what led me on the path to where I am today. What was that rise up moment for you?
Yeah, I've certainly had several. I mean, I do think that, 10 years ago, it's interesting to discover this because it was June 5th, 2008, was like emblazoned in I've had a few specific dates in my life where I was like, oh boy, like something really shifted literally that day. And this one really, I don't have a day for it, but I think it was when I really like decided, and this, again, I don't know, there was a moment where I was like, okay, let's do MFF for real. But whenever that happened, which I think was, it's hard to, you can't ever quite trust your brain, your memory. But I know sometime in the summer of 2011, as I sort of gave myself permission to dream in a different way and being willing to do the hard things I knew I would need to do to make MFF more than just a really lovely solopreneur lifestyle business, was a moment of me like definitely entering the cave I feared to enter, and knowing in advance that there was going to be a terrible price to pay in many ways to make this a thing, and trusting, rightfully, I think, as it turns out, that the price would be painful and it would pay itself back a millionfold.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Where can people get a hold of you? Where for more information, find out more? I know you have the Business for Unicorns. We can talk about that real quick, but where can people get access to you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is probably on businessforunicorns.com. That is where certainly anyone interested in mine and Michael's thoughts on business, where we keep a very consistent blog. We also do offer courses in various skills of entrepreneurship. And people can find me on Facebook. I'm like reasonably active on. I'm still not on Instagram, though weirdly the past like week I've been like, well, let me get on Instagram.
Get on there.
Yeah, I know. And everyone's like, you need to be on there. I'm like, no, I don't.
No.
I'm doing great. No, I don't. And yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Mark at businessforunicorns.com. You can always email me anytime. Anybody wants to check out Mark Fisher Fitness, it's at markfisherfitness.com. And then markfisherhumanbeing.com is always a place where people can go find out where I'm speaking in the world.
Nice. We'll link all that up at the end. I'll link all that up so everyone can have access to it. And before we go, man, I want to acknowledge you. I want to say thank you because you've had a big impact on my life, and you've definitely challenged me since you and I have become friends to really think different as a leader. I was always that manager that led those meetings all weird and all about numbers, and ever since you and I have talked, and I've heard you speak at events, even at my own event, you've made me a better leader and you've made me a better fitness professional. So I just want to acknowledge you and say thank you for that. Thank you for what you're doing for the industry. You're a leader among this industry, and I want to say thank you.
Hey, you're a kind-hearted fellow, and that means a lot to hear, brother. Appreciate that.
Anytime. All right, guys. Well, we're gonna sign off. Thank you, Mark, for joining us for this 50-minute. I love this conversation. It's one of my favorite ones. So thank you, Mark, for joining us. And we will see you guys later or next week on the Rise Up Show. Have a great day, guys. Cool.